Hello, my name's Michael Han, and very pleased to be joined this evening by, from the left, Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, and from the right, Stephen Wilson, who has remixed Pink Floyd at Pompeii. And before we begin, just a reminder, please don't take any photos or film, and at the end, please let our guests leave, so remain seated while they leave the auditorium. Now, Nick, we probably ought to get into the very big question first. Why do you hate pie crust so much?
Well, I can't even remember the right answer to that. I should perhaps warn everyone, excuse me, that some time ago, one of my daughters persuaded me to do an online Pink Floyd quiz. I scored 56%. So I'm hoping that we can answer some questions without having to rely on my stories.
Well, given the legacy of Pink Floyd at Pompeii in the band's mythology, your band has returned there, David's band has returned there to play. Why has it taken so long to revisit this film and to finally release an album of it? It rather disappeared as a sort of element of Pink Floyd, I think, partly because the tendency is always to move forward with whatever you're doing. And the interesting thing for me is just that this movie actually covers 3 different albums, which is really quite extraordinary. Normally, any project tends to revolve around one specific album, and this is far more sort of wide-ranging in that respect. Well, question for both of you. I mean, how important a document of post-Sid but pre-Dark Side Floyd do you think this collection of music is?
How important? I have no idea. It's so difficult to decide. In fact, listening to my colleagues.
I have an idea.
Over to you.
I think it's very important because it kind of symbolises the transition of Pink Floyd from a post-psychedelic, essentially improvisational band to a conceptual rock band. And you see that transition in the movie because they're recording Dark Side of the Moon, so things become more structured, less psychedelic, less improvisational, but the live footage is still very free and very experimental. So I think to have documented that transition is almost unheard of in any band's history. And
you're right, because you see it on screen, the contrast between the music, the improvised music, and the Dark Side stuff. Now, I watched the original on YouTube the other day, Stephen, and was slightly staggered by how high you were in the mix, Nick. I don't know if that was just a YouTube thing, but what did you find when you started listening to the tapes again, Stephen?
So the tapes that I had available to me, there's essentially just 4 mono feeds for the band. So Nick's drums are in mono. And so the internal balance of the drums is set. There's not a lot I can do with that. I can't make the drums sound very stereo, for example. Similarly, the bass, the keyboards, the guitar, they're essentially a single mono feed each. Now, when you look at the movie, that's not a problem, because essentially what you're trying to do is create a soundtrack which works with the movie. It doesn't distract the eye. So the fact that Nick is essentially in mono doesn't matter really, because he's sitting in the middle, you know. So there wasn't a massive amount I could do in terms of making it sound spatial and surroundy, but there were some overdubs in Paris, so some sound design elements, some extra keyboard overdubs, a couple of extra guitar overdubs, vocal overdubs. So I was able to do a little bit in terms of opening it up, but essentially most of it you're listening to 4 mono feeds.
Well, one of the things in that, because of that, you can really hear the R&B band that Pink Floyd used to be in there, can't you? During the groove sections of Echoes and the second part of One of These Days. You're real rock. You guys could groove.
But I think for me that the other thing worth noting is just it's a 55-year-old film, something like that. And what Stephen's done on it is just, I mean, I realise you had limited tapes to work with, but I do think the sound on it it's very real. I mean, it really is a live show.
I think that's what I was aiming for, because what I was looking at is the movie, and I'm saying, okay, you guys are playing outside. there's not going to be a lot of ambience, right? I mean, unless you tell me otherwise. I'm imagining it was a very dry, kind of arid, close sound, right? You're playing outside. So I kind of figured, you know what, you're not going to add a lot of reverb and a lot of artificial ambience and reflections. You want to keep it very close, very organic, and that's kind of what I went for. Yeah.
Well, thank you, because I think we're delighted with the way it turned out.
Thank you.
And I think it might be a moment just to also recognise someone who really did the major part of the work on the actual visuals, and that's Lana Tucker.
Where is she? There she is. Lana.
This is her project, really. I mean, Lana is someone who has actually lived with this movie for years and years and years, very occasionally getting some sort of response from us, but
Really?
not
Did
much.
I
She
get
did
some?
it very
Some?
single-handedly.
I don't
Remember that,
that
Lana?
bit.
Do you remember getting a response from the band? No.
I just kept pushing and pushing. And it could be an IMAX, you know? It's not good. Nothing. Yeah, so here we are.
It looks amazing. It looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Looks like it
and
was
I-
filmed
and
yesterday.
obviously
It's
I've
a
got
cliche, but it really
9
does.
other technicians that worked on it. A couple of them are down there, so it was 9 other people as well as myself. But
Now, both of you, as musicians, are used to playing shows that are a production. And while this is an event, because it's in an arena, it's not a production. Is there something appealing about just setting up and playing? I mean, clearly it's not the back room of a pub, it's not the Half Moon in Putney, but it's still setting up and playing without worrying about any of the lighting, any of the cues, any of the effects.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the charms of of this, is the fact that there aren't lots of cuts and then roll back and drop in and so on. This is, again, there's someone who should be mentioned, which is Adrian Marvin, who actually came up with this whole idea. We were unspeakably not interested. Adrian worked really hard to even persuade us to come out to Italy and actually make this movie. Where was I going with that? That was, just something that needed mentioning.
I guess there's a strange thing, isn't it? Because this was 4 days out of your life as young men, and yet here we are, 50 plus years talking about it. I imagine actually there isn't that much about it you remember from first time round.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, unlike most of the things we did, this was very much sort of put together by outsiders, if you like, by Adrian. And the thing that worked about it, that we didn't see and he did, was this thing of it being a live show, but with no audience. And the fact that this arena, this amphitheatre, created such a sense of moment that even without the audience, it had the feel of a full-on in.
But that's a pure Floyd thing, isn't it? Can you imagine the Who filming a show without an audience? You can't. You can't. But for Floyd, it somehow works. It's like, because I think there was always a sense, when I was growing up and getting into your music, there was always a sense, which I admired massively, that you didn't cater for your audience at all. You did not care. You did not care if you had an audience. It was almost like incidental to what you did. And this movie is the epitome of that. You're playing to no audience, and you just look like you're doing it for yourselves. And that seems to me a very Floyd way of doing things.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. It's a way of giving no quarter to an audience and just doing it our own way. I mean, so many over the years, it's sort of looking at something like. I found it quite moving as well. I have to say, as well as.
Well,
entertaining.
you are the star of the movie, Nick. Let's face it.
When your vest and your little tosses of the drumsticks 5 minutes into Echoes, we all saw that.
Well, not only. How many people play drums in this room? Anyone? Yeah. Did you notice the way my left hand's stick holding? It starts great, and I'm playing it properly and doing it all, and then gradually, as the movie gets going, I revert back to clutching the stick and waving it loudly.
Now, return to the point you made, Stephen, about the lack of audience. One thing that brings to the fore in the film, the lack of audience and lack of effects, is the clarity of the Pink Floyd sound, which is utterly unique and could only be made by those four individuals combining in that way. And that's the crucial thing, isn't the combination? How did that sound come about? Was it something that came naturally to you all, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, how does a band develop? And the answer is it's so variable how it works. I loved the stuff at Abbey Road because it sort of brought back those memories, and also it's unbelievable to watch these boys who think they know it all. And I'm afraid to say it's been proved that they didn't.
But you've been a band for several years by this point, but you weren't yet superstars. It still feels like there's an innocence about you watching it, which is one of the charms of the film.
Absolutely, there is an innocence, and it's extraordinary to sort of watch us just going at it, and arguing, but in a constructive way.
I mean, this set that's in this show, in the film, this repertoire that's in the film, presumably you've been playing that day in, day out, night in, night out, across the UK and across Europe and across America for months. You've been playing this repertoire for...
Well, not the entire repertoire, because Echoes...
Echoes was quite new. Right.
Saucer was being played a
Eugene,
lot.
you've been playing a lot. Yeah.
So it was a bit of a mix, but really interesting to hear the early work on Dark Side, which is going through some ideas that move on and end up on the album.
With the transition between this and Dark Side, Nick, was there a very concerted attempt to make the songwriting more focused for the next record after this?
I don't think so. Actually, no. There must have been, because I do remember very clearly that decision to make Dark Side, I won't call it a concept album, but that it would take these ideas of mortality, or regression or whatever, so that, yes, there must have been very much a sense that this would now be no more 23-minute pieces. We're going to...
I mean, sorry to interrupt you, was there a sense that when you were making Pompeii, it's like, okay, we make this document, we can kind of leave that behind now?
No, I don't think we were that clever. I think, as I say, it wasn't our idea. We really did go into it fairly blind, and we certainly didn't anticipate the feel of the amphitheatre.
Was it? Can I ask? Because one thing that comes up a lot in the discussions about Pompeii, and particularly the audio mix, is why did you split Echoes? Now I've always assumed that was Adrian's idea, that he was going to split Echoes. It was going to bookend the movie. It was going to have the long tracking shot in at the beginning, and the long tracking shot out at the end, and you had to basically improvise an ending halfway through in order to do that. Would that be a fair comment? Don't remember.
Don't remember. But no, I think, again, this was something where Adrian came in and said, this is how it should be done.
Because you'd never done it.
No, we'd never
done it
before.
in 2 parts before.
But I don't... The problem is that there were very few conversations where we were actually discussing the film. In general, we were either walking up the side of some volcano.
Whose idea was it for you to become the monkeys?
I think it's compulsory in all those 70s rock films that there is a scene of 4 men walking through a blasted landscape. If you watch all of them, it is there. But
running in a zany way down a mountain.
Yeah. No, I think we thought... I do think we just thought we are not going to go down the route of becoming the monkeys. We just haven't got the right personalities.
I'm not sure,
For
actually. I think you
double
pull it
speed in
off.
the tape.
We're not going to
I
do
think you
casting
put it on.
Pink Floyd as the Monkees. We are not doing that. For many people, this era of Pink Floyd it's the most special. What do you think is it that resonates about the music the group was making at this point? And it's what you've returned to, but it's also full of secrets as well.
What's the... what was the
Why do you think people love this era of Pink Floyd so much, the 71, 72?
I don't know. I suppose it's that thing where people hook into something that is different to what went before. You know, it's one of the things about, again, going back to watching it, is all that stuff in Abbey Road, in number 2 studio. Well, 3 years before that, we were in the little glass box at the top of the studio, being allowed to come in and watch the Beatles in that same room. And there's a moment there where you just think, yeah, things do move along, don't they?
As a fan, Stephen, I mean, obviously you're a fan, but as a fan, what do you love about this era, about these songs?
To me, it's that they're still psychedelic, just about. So they still have that kind of psychedelic improvisational quality about them. You can tell a lot of the music feels very open-ended, and that kind of ends with Dark Side. From Dark Side on, it becomes very structured, very conceptual. The band suddenly are elevated to much bigger venues where, forgive me if I'm putting words into your mouth, I think they feel less comfortable than they had playing the smaller theatres. So that kind of symbiotic organism where they can all see each other and all playing against each other is not so relevant anymore. But here, they're at that peak of that era. So they've got the repertoire, they've been playing these songs for 4 or 5 years in some cases, and it's still got that element of the post-Sid psychedelic era. But it's becoming more structured as well. It's got the best of everything for me.
Is that why you returned to playing it, Nick? Because it had a little of everything?
Yeah, definitely. And it still has, if you play those early pieces, you can get away with improvising, really, which you really can't if you're going to do justice to, well, the ball in particular.
We're very short on time because this is a working cinema and I have another film coming up. So, Stephen, if you could work on one other Pink Floyd album, which would you choose?
Wow. I mean, I would love to work on any of the albums that were made prior to this. So, Piper would be amazing. Saucer would be amazing. I love Ummagumma. I even love the studio record of Ummagumma. Absolutely love it. Including the Grand Vizier's Garden Party. I love it. No, but it's being serious for a moment. Hearing an album like Ummagumma when I was a kid, that opened a door to me to Stockhausen and experimental music. It's a very, very important album for me. Atom Heart Mother could be amazing in surround.
Yeah.
Metal would be amazing. I mean,
Is there an album, Nick, that you could imagine being remixed, being cleaned up, being given more clarity for this century? And if there is, which one would you like?
Well, I suppose I'd always come back to Piper, which, not Piper, sorry, Source Full of Secrets, because that was where I went with the Sources for the last three or 4 years. No, I mean, you can listen to any work you've done. You can always find things that you'd like to change or modify or rework.
And on that, ladies and gentlemen, remember, please stay in your seats until our guests have left. And please give your thanks to the great Nick Mason and to Stephen Wilson.